Mahabharata is an earlier Indonesian book. Part 2 to Part 3. Santosaba works. Created as a discourse to scientists based on academic studies and studies, in an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. Indonesian Arya. By Santosaba. Exploration and research. Complete info. WhatsApp to +62 813 2132 9787. MPU Seta and MPU Panula Literary Works. The three Kekawin below are literary works of MPU Seta and MPU Panula, written during the reign of Prabu Jayabaya during the Kadiri period. This work was dedicated to him, Prabu Jayabaya. MPU Panula received a command from the king to describe Kresna's famous deeds, and MPU Panula continued the work of Puu Seta starting from the scene when Salya was the commander-in-chief. Hariwangsa was written before Bharatayuddha, which initiated the creation of literary works at that time. 1. Hariwangsa. In this book the news is written in the form of a story written by MPU Seta and MPU Panula. The previous news is written in a story like this which has been summarized. Vishnu incarnated into the world in the form of Krishna to protect the world and destroy Boma, Kangsa and Kalayawana. Narada came down and reported this. Dui Shri incarnated into Rukmini, the son of Bhasmaka, King Kundina, who was Krishna's only lover. Krishna tried to get Rukmini by all means, until a war broke out. The Pandavas at that time sided with Jarasandha on behalf of the knights, the Kauravas too. The war ensued. The Rini and Yadu were in the leadership of Krishna against Jarasandha's troops. Jarasandha died, but the war continued, until all of them died. All that was left was Yudhishthira, but he was drugged by Mohanana's weapon, and Arjuna fought Krsna until the two of them reunited into Vishnu's form. Yudhishthira realized and begged Vishnu to bring everything back to life and restore the condition. After being granted, Vishnu returned to the form of Krsna and Arjuna, then they returned to their respective places. Krishna's marriage took place, and then the four wives of Krsna, the embodiment of Shri, gave birth to their children. After saving the world, Krsna and Rukmini returned to their diva forms and returned to Sorgaloka. 2. Bharatayuddha tells about the Pandava and Kaurava wars. From the moment Krishna conducted negotiations and decided to go to war. The war on the part of the Kauravas was held by Bhisma until finally Salya. All of them fall, and the victory is on the side of the Pandavas. Duryodhana lives in a hermitage until the war. He sparred with Bhima until he was killed. The Pandavas and Krsna came home victorious, but Krishna was remembered by the oath of Duryodhana, so he and the Pandavas decided to go to holy places to atone for sins. On the same night before dawn, Aswatthama killed his enemies including the 5 Drupadi children while sleeping. Drupadi, determined to take revenge, asked that the pearl that decorated Aswatthama's forehead be given to him. The Pandavas track him down and Bhima almost kills him. Aswatthama raises the magic arrow gift from Drona, but it cannot be controlled and finally penetrates Uttari's womb, but by Krsna is revived. 3. Ghatotbakasraya. During the exile of the Pandavas, Abhimanyu lived with his mother in Dwarawati, until he became a handsome virgin and fell in love with Kesati Sundari, Krishna's daughter. Balarama was angry knowing this because Sundari had an arranged marriage with Duryodhana's son. Abhimanyu ran to the forest, met goddess Durga and was given instructions to ask Ghatotbaka's help to capture the princess, which then showed in a war spearheaded by Duryodhana who attacked Yadu. At that time Krishna was in the hermitage and immediately went home to straighten out the problem. Finally, the love of the two of them could not be hindered anymore, but after the completion of the exile of the Pandavas, Abhimanyu and his mother went to Warada. There Abhimanyu was married to Dia Uttari, the daughter of Warada and the next Sitasundari, as Abhimanyu's second wife. In the interpretation of Hariwangsa, Krsna and Rukmini in the literary writings above, we interpret it as a story about Krsna, and among Kresna's lives, the kidnapping of Rukmini was the story most favored by the Javanese people of old. The Krs Nyan story contained in the summary above is the same as in Hariwangsa, namely, with the essence of the incident of Rukmini's seizure by Krsna, which in a great war involving the Pandavas and the Kauravas as Kresna's enemies at that time. MPU Dharmaja, MPU Managuna and MPU Triguna. Smaradahana. At that time heaven was threatened by Nilarudraka, and only Shiva could face it. Indra sent Kama to interrupt Shiva's yoga, and it was discovered that Shiva in an instant Kama was scorched by the fire emanating from Shiva. The gods, Radha and the others wept over Kama's death. Because of her loyalty, Radha threw herself into the fire and finally was able to meet Kama but could not unite because she was not bodied. Kama entered Shiva's heart, Radha entered Uma's heart. And when Shiva's meeting with Umayang in the sun, who was born by Uma to resemble an elephant because just before the sun was born, Indra brought an elephant in front of Uma which made Uma feel scared. Gana was born, and when Nilarudraka was attacked the gods, it was Ganala who finally killed Nilarudraka during the battle of the gods with the giants under Nilarudraka's leadership, and in the end the world returned to calm. The literary writer who calls himself Mpu Dharmaja in this story shows praise for Kama. The praise is written in his verse and addressed to Srikameswara during the Daha Kadiri era as a sign of honor. Sumanasantaka. This is the first literary work written by Mpu Managuna, written during the Kadiri era, to be precise during the Warsajaya kingdom, namely Warsajaya himself was a teacher of Managuna. In this book it is written, because of a fear, Indra sent Harini to tempt Turnawindu who was doing Topa Broto. Turnawindu knew that this was Indra's scheme. Ayamara, curse that Harini will be reborn as a human. Harini begged the curse to be lifted but it could not be done. But Turnawindu promised that his heavenly lover would be born as a human, namely Prince Asia, and Harini's history would be finished by a flower of Sumanasa. Harini was born as the daughter of a king who ruled the Karthakesika people. She was named Indamat but eventually her parents died and the throne was taken over by her brother, Prince Bhoja. Bhoja held a competition for Indumati and Prince Asia from Ayodhya came out victorious and succeeded in bringing home Indumati as his wife, having a child named Dasaratha. One time, Narada performed an idol by playing a musical instrument along with the Sapta Rsi. A flower necklace of Sumanasa fell from her musical instrument and fell on Indumati's chest, and a few moments later she died and returned to the Saloka. The prince died in a holy bath where the Sarayu river meets. 8 years later Dasaratha ascended the throne. Bomantaka or Bomakawaya. Bomantaka. In this literary work, among other things, stories like this are written. The sages asked Krsna to help the hermits at the Tapabroto location in a sacred area on the mountain, because they are always bothered by the giants. Krsna sent his son Samba, where Samba stayed for some time and became friends with a Wiswamitra student named Gunadeva. Having heard the story from Gunadeva, Samba knew that in his previous life he had left his lover, Yajñawati, who had become Naraka's adopted son. Then Samba managed to meet Yajñawati there. When he was about to be run away, he was caught by the giants. When the Samba was about to attack the Boma palace, it was discovered by Narada and suggested that he return to Dwarawati first to take care of the situation while Yajñawati was secured by Boma's men. Then the troops were prepared. Boma is looking for allies including Jarasandha, Raja Sati, Raja Magadha, and Satrantapa. In battle, all of Krishna's allies were defeated. Finally, the time for the battle between Krsna and Boma came. Krsna returns to Vishnu's appalling form, with his eagle keeping Boma's weapon away from Boma himself, and in the end Boma can be killed by Vishnu. Then Indra appeared, gave grace and everyone was brought back to life except Boma. Mpu Tantalar. Arjunavijaya literary work Mpu Tantalar. Arjunavijaya tells about Raja Rawana, Dasamukha, who on his way to destroy the places in his path, he received many curses from his enemies such as himself, and his palace will be finished by the incarnation of Vishnu, also by monkeys and other creepy curses. When disturbing Shiva by lifting the foot of Mount Kailash, his hand was caught by the mountain that was pressed by Shiva, then Rawana asked for mercy. Another time, Dasamukha did a tapabroto in front of a phallus. She was disturbed by water flooding her place and she was forced to run to a hill. The giant told that this was the result of Arjuna Sahasrabahu making the dam in the lower reaches of the Gunade use. As a result, Dasamukha was angry and attacked Arjuna, but Arjuna had heard the news and was ready to prepare troops. War ensued. Kasamukha was repeatedly killed but came back to life. Eventually, Dasamukha was knocked unconscious, then tied with chains and was taken away. When he returned home, his wife had died with her maids because a giant brought the news that Arjuna had died, so his wife killed herself. But finally revived. Dasamukha was released again at the request of Dasamukha's own grandfather, named Pulastya. All those who had died were brought back to life by Pulastya as a sign of gratitude to Arjuna. Sutasoma. Text excerpt from the Sutasoma book by Umpu Tantalar. Ananya. Vigilnanjasanka Sarlra. Asabdanya. Muksarak Sarlra. Kandrarupa fish Sarlra re muksanin bdyu rin Sarlra. Samalalilana heninikan Sarlravakasan. SDNTA Kandranaranikt. SDNTA Smrtanaran Vana. Rahananin Smrti Suryasdianta Kandradatakadvaya Jainna. Padamu nin Vyam Vanadvaya Jainna. Yadandadayakan Divarupa. B42, AVD SAD KDLA, a Henanir Varanakadi Tehanining in Manak, a Pavas Gavade, Sarugandatangavai. Ekanama Yadik Dizanangasakyanadvaya Naranira, Bapasirid Butdrehiandada. Ekanj Navrutan Vikalpahumadeknir DKDRA, Yadikasinan Jananaranira. Sanhyanadvaya Nasiratadavai Bardli Pranidipidramat Naranira, Saratai Butdrehiandadi. San Hyan Divarupa Sira Ta Buddra Hyan Buddha Naranira. Meters Shragdara Sribajride Nasunyatma Kaparamasardnandur in Radvisaza. Lila Sud HD Pratisthan HR Daya Jayajayankan Mod Svargaloka. Ekakatran Sararanharipi Sahana Nin Bur Buva Svah Prakarnadbri. Singi Yan Siddha Yajasvara Vekas Ira San at least Idvan Buttra. Sarva Jainamurti Sunyaganala Nukap must be Nin Dharma Tattva. Tantalar. Sudasomakakavan 38.1, 42.4. 38. Metrapraharsini. 1. Satvendroraga Tika Mukhya Hastavaktra, Bhakti Aryanjali Re Sira and Narendra Putra, Kapvamantavanara Hinmahopadesa, Varanuntutenan Asintya Sunyadharma. 2. What are Kvehi Mana I San Mahadi Yogi, Wantan Nirmala Bhava Eat Ginan Tvas, Len Tan Tyaga Paja Anan Yadhasta Dharma, Panlinganarpa Sudanastamankyamalya. 3. Sansiptan Leva Fish Paratra Clan, Senkan Moksaka Re Haidik Padak Nararya, Dubagyadika Panukapta Sadhu Rin Rat, Adya Enve Imajarama Saksya Sanrasindra. 4. Sirajalintaparama Moksa Margadibaya, with Mahadi Vidvan Association, Tan Moksaga as well as Visaza Dharma Marga, Matyasan Saparaganing Kabadhisitvan. 5. Ponan Zastratecapisan Visaza Sadhu, Yadian Panlaha Sukayan Parartha Danya, Derlaxmayathava Sugahaki Tan Vikalpa, Mon Matyahurapalamun Jagad Ditartha. 6. Here are Parama Narasrayaki Ganan, Rin Jathianadika Vekas In Maha Visaza, Tan Svargabudaya Kitan Panakachita, Yekan targeting fish and Paratra Marga. 7. Tandianan Vividaniklinantamanko, Vidyati Kramajanalardakap Bhatara, Dharma Tuvu Ekan Samasta Bhumi, Madi M Van Mahurapanakasarstaninwan. 8. Pujayoga Japasamadidanapunya, Lentekabratasusapaksa Bhairavatva, Salvarnyaya Suba Subhapravartiranrat, Jainanavesamilu Tumutpanarbhaveka. Sudasoma's literary work tells of a prince from the king Sri Mahakatu who ruled in Hastina. His kingdom is threatened by the giants and their leaders. Only his descendants were able to defeat the giant. When asked to ascend the throne, Sudasoma refused to choose to wander. After a long journey, he met his cousin, Raja Dasabahu, and he would soon marry a sister from Dasabahu named Kandrawati, and he returned to his palace to meet his parents and then ascended the throne. The giant king Porasada had just recovered from his wounds from associating with Kala, but when he wanted a reward to offer 100 kings to him. After getting 100 kings, Kala asked to be added with King Sudasoma. Porasada goes to look for Sudasoma to be arrested. After the meeting, Sudasoma himself was surrendered in order to exchange the 100 kings he had previously captured with him. Sudasoma went to see Kala. The 100 kings were released and Kala tried to kill Sudasoma by becoming a dragon and began to swallow Sudasoma. At once Kala was filled with love and compassion and did not kill Sudasoma, and begged him to be accepted as his disciple. The world felt peace, and finally Sudasoma and Kandrawati returned to heaven, and Hastina was led by her son Ardana. Nagara Kirtagama by Pipanka. Nagara Kirtagama is a literary work written by the Kawi named Prapanka. This manuscript was only discovered in Lombok in 1894. Kekawin Nagara Kirtagama depicts the Majapahit kingdom under the rule of the king of Rajasanagara, Hayam Wurik. This Kekawin refers to areas of power. Majapahit, the journey of King Hayam Wuruk through his territory every year at the end of winter, a Shraddha ceremony to commemorate Tribhuwana, the Empress Mother Rajapatni. This Kekawin is also called Desawarnana, depiction of royal territory. Nagara Kretagama contains descriptions of the relationship of the royal family, state officials, the course of government, customs, and temple to the graves of the ancestors. And the Perdikan villages, the state of the capital city, the state of the villages along the road around Sang Prabu in 1359 AD. The role of the Nagarakretagama as the source of Indonesia's ancient history was relatively large, although there are those who argue that Nagarakretagama was influenced by subjective elements in order to please the rulers at that time. Nagarakretagama has another name, namely Desawarnana or description of villages, as stated in stanza 94. This manuscript was completed in the month of Aswina in Saka year 1287, September. October 1365 AD, the author uses the pseudonym Prapanka. Based on the results of historical analysis that has been carried out, it is known that the author of this manuscript is Dangakarya Nadendra, considered a former official of Buddhist affairs at the Majapahit Palace. He is the son of a palace official in Majapahit with the rank of Dharmadayaksa Kasagadan. The writer of this script completed the Kakawin Nagarakretagama manuscript in his old age in a hermitage on a mountain slope in a village called Kamalasana. Nagarakretagama is the best journalistic work, while Mpu Prapanka is said to be the famous journalist from the Majapahit kingdom. However, many things are still being neglected today, for example research on temples and villages mentioned in the book. Mpu Prapanka itself is seen as a pioneer of Indonesian archaeology and a precursor to historical archaeology. This is because Prapanka made a kind of inventory and description of the various types of ancient relics that existed in his era. Prapanka has conducted a field survey, something that benefits the world of science. According to Budia Pradipta in the paper, Nagarakretagama Manuscript Review held by the National Library of Indonesia in 2005, the Majapahit region is grouped into 5 groups, namely 1. Java includes Nagara Majapahit, Jiwana, Singasari, Wengker, Lasem, Daha, Pajong, Matahan, Paguhan, Warabumi, Mataram, Pawanawan, and Kabalan. 2. Digantara means other areas, namely areas that are subject to the king of Rajasanagara apart from Java. These areas are Pahang, Malayu, Gurun, and Bakulapura. 3. Nusantara is other islands, which include the archipelago, namely the Malay area, the Cape Nagara area, and the area of the Malay Peninsula. Desantara is all directions, all space, other regions, and other countries. 4. Desantara is Sayanka, Ayodhyapura, Dharmanagari, Marutama, Rajapura, Anghanagari, Kampa, Cambodia. 5. Dwipantara is another archipelago, which includes Dwipantara and partners are Yuwana, China, Karnataka, and Goda. Behind this controversy there is an interesting thing. Sunda and Madura are not called royal territories, even though this text mentions a lot of areas from the northern tip of the island of Sumatra, Brunei to Papua. In the text it is called Wanan equals Anan. The author admits that Nagarakretagama is not the first book he has written. Previously, Prapanka had written Parwasagara, Bismasaranantia, Sugataparwa, and 2 other books that have not been completed, namely Sabah Abda and Lambang. However, all this has yet to be found or has been destroyed. Nagarakretagama means a country with sacred traditions, religion. But the author also calls it Desawarnana, which means writing on regions. Nagarakretagama was composed by Mpu Prapanka in 1365 AD, 1287 Saka in the village of Kamalasana on the slopes of Mount. At the time of writing Nagarakretagama, Prapanka still did not have an Mpu title because he was still an aspiring poet. His father was Mpu Nadendra and held the position of Dharmadhyaksa Ring Kasagadan, or chairman in religious affairs. Nagarakretagama consists of 98 stanzas. This manuscript begins with the worship of King Wilwatikta, namely the king of Majapahit at the time of King Hayam Wuruk, who was mentioned as Shiva, namely Rajasanagara. The next 7 stanzas contain the king and his family, the next 9 stanzas about the palace and the city of Majapahit. This is where historians and archaeologists reconstruct the history of Majapahit. The longest part is a record of Hayam Wuruk's trip to Lumajang 23 Pupa, which took place from August to September 1359. 10 of these stanzas tell a brief lineage of the kings of Singasari and Majapahit dynasty Garindra. The next section tells of the king's hunt 10 Pupa, the story of Gajah Mada 23 Pupa, and the Shraddha ceremony for the king's mother 9 Pupa. And the last 7 stanzas tell themselves about Prapanka. This text was originally thought to have been inherited only in a single manuscript which was saved by J. L. A. Brandis, an expert in Dutch Javanese literature, who also attacked the palace of the King of Lombok in 1894. When this raid was carried out, the KNIL soldiers set fire to the palace and Brandis rescued the contents of the king's library, which contained hundreds of palm manuscripts. One of them is this Nagakretagama Lontar. All the manuscripts from Lombok are known as the Lontar Lombok collection, which is very famous. The Lombok collection is preserved in the library of the Dutch Leiden University. The Nagarakretagama manuscript is stored in Leiden and is given the code number L or 5.023. Then, with the visit of Queen Juliana, the Netherlands to Indonesia in 1973, this manuscript was submitted to the Republic of Indonesia. It is said that this manuscript was immediately kept by Mrs. Tien Soeharto at her house, but this is not true. Manuscripts are stored in the National Library of Indonesia and given code NB9. Mpu Prapanka was a Javanese literary bachelor who lived in the 14th century in the Majapahit era and is probably the most famous musician besides being a buyanga. His name is known by everyone in Indonesia. This is because Prapanka was the author of the famous Kakawin Nagarakretagama. It took 614 years for the descendants of the Majapahit people, not only to get a picture of life in the palace, where usually the poets were entrenched in its ivory towers, but a Desawarnana description of villages. Prapanka did not get the truth for free. He had to separate himself from Hayam Wuruk's entourage, on a tour of 1359, to see another reality, which not all writers at that time dared to do, let alone write it down. Nagarakretagama, the only matchless source of the existence of Majapahit, could only be borne by a bold vision against the establishment, not only in literary writing, but also in the political establishment. In his analysis, Slamet Muyana revealed, even though the manuscript was a poetry to Daya Hayam Wuruk Sri Rajasanagara, Prapanka's political understanding was not in line with Gajah Mada, which had been a guideline since the reign of Tribhuwana Tunggadui. The creation of this literary work was a sign of devotion to Prabu Hayam Wuruk, even though in writing the book Nagarakretagama Prapanka no longer lived in the Majapahit palace. Prapanka no longer served as Dharmadiaksa Kasagodan but lived in the village of Kamalasana on the slopes of a mountain as a hermit. Prapanka left the Majapahit palace because he was insulted in the form of an insult to the attitude of Prapanka by Sri Baganda, which caused his position to be shifted as Dharmadiaksa Kasagodan. Prabu Hayam Wuruk believed in the slander of a noble against him. However, the Prapanka master did not hold a grudge against the king, even worshipped the majesty of King Hayam Wuruk. It is said that when Raja Lasem came to power in Lombok, the manuscript was brought from Bali to Lombok. On the base of the above, it can be concluded that Emu Prapanka after leaving Majapahit settled in the village of Karangasem, Bali. The village of Kamalasana where Prapanka is meditating is a Sanskrit name from the real name Karangasem. In mid-1978 in the village of Karangasem, Bali, the Desawarnana manuscript was found, which is a literary work by Prapanka which is now kept at Griha Padata Karangasem, Bali. 3 more manuscripts mentioning the Nagarakretagama book were found in Griha Padata Kelingkung, and Griha Karak Sideman. This manuscript is the same as the Nagarakretagama book found at Puri Kakranagara, Lombok. Dikawarnana, which describes the villages he visited on his way to accompany Prabu Hayam Wuruk, then Saka Abda, Lambang, Parwa Sagara, Bismasaranantia and Sagataparwa. From Pupa 17/8 it is known that Prapanka is a descendant of a Dharmadayaksa, religious leader, during the reign of Prabu Hayam Wuruk. Prapanka replaced his father's position as Dharmadayaksa, considered Buddhist leader, from 1358 to 1361 AD. Since childhood, Prapanka liked to face the king with the intention that the king would allow him to follow his journey anywhere because of his desire to formulate the history of the state's territory in marriage. The name Prapanka is a pseudonym. Prapanka consists of pra and panka elements, which means pre-5, namely Prapanka, Prakakab, Prapongpong, Prakakad and Prakongkong, namely the bodily defects of the author, namely if they laugh out loud, their cheeks are swollen, their eyes widen like a sleepy person, their ability is a bit odd or funny. The name Prapanka is probably a pen name and means, confused. His real name is Rangwi Padalangan Dangakarya Nadendra, who served as Dharmadhyaksa Kasagadan during the reign of Prabhu Hayam Wurik as stated in the Trewulan Charter and Sakar Charter. The use of the pseudonym Prapanka, which means sadness, is used because at the time of writing Nagarakretagama, the author of his life was filled with sadness because he lost his position as Dharmadhyaksa Kasagadan and left Majapahit to live in the village in loneliness. He was afraid of being known because of his characteristics, so he used a pseudonym. The Nagarakretagama book he wrote in the Saka year 1287. September-October 1365 describes the tour of Prabhu Hayam Wurik to Lumajang in the year 1281, where Umpu Prapanka participated in the group as Dharmadhyaksa Kasagadan. Contents of Kakawin Nagarakretagana Pupa 1. 1. Om. Worship my despicable people under the soles of the feet. The protector of the universe Shiva Buddha Janma Bhattara is always calmly immersed in Samadhi sang Sri Prawadanada, the protector of the poor, the super king of the god Bhattara world, more imaginary than imaginary, but appears above the ground. 2. Evenly and pervasive of all creatures, useless for the Vaisnavas, Aiswara for yogis, Purusa for Kapila, wealthy like Jambala, Wagandra in all knowledge, the god of love in lust, Lord Yama in removing obstacles and guaranteeing the world. 3. That is the praise of the poet who composed the history of the king, to Sri Nada Rajasanagara, Sri Nada Milwatikta, who is currently holding the reins of the state. Like an incarnation of the god Bhattara, he sweeps the grief of the people of all, submits faithfully to all of Java, even throughout the archipelago. 4. The Saka year during solar archery, 1256, he was born to be Narpati, while in the womb in Kahuripan, there were signs of nobility, earthquakes, puffs of smoke, ash rain, thunder of lightning flashed, Mount Kampad roared to kill wicked, criminals vanished from the country. 5. That is a sign that Bhattara Garinada is incarnate as a great king. It is proven that during his reign, the whole land of Java submits to the rulers, Waipra, Satriya, Vaisya, Sudra, the four perfect castes in devotion. Wicked stop doing evil, afraid of Sri Nada's courage. Pupa 2. 1. The famous Sri Rajapatni is the grandmother of Sri Baganda, like the incarnation of Parama Bhagavati over the universe, as an old Vikuni diligently practicing yoga and worshipping Buddha. In Saka Dresti Saptaruna, 1272, she returned to Buddhaloka. The interpretation of the literary text of the word, worshipping Buddha, must be clarified. 2. When Sri Rajapatni returned to Jinapada, the world was in mourning, and was happy to pray devotion again since the king's ascension to the throne. The mother of Tribhuwana Vijayatungadui was happy to take the throne, like a Rani in Jiwana officially representing Sri Narendra's son. Pupa 3. 1. He prayed devotedly to the mother of Sri Rajapatni, faithfully followed the teachings of his ancestors, Swade who had died. The father of the king was Sri Kirtawardhana Raja, both of them firmly believed in Buddha for the sake of peace of the Praja. 2. His father, Sri Baganda Raja, resides in Singasari, like Ratnasambhawa, to increase mutual prosperity, steadfast in advancing the prosperity of the people and the country, skilled in civil driving, wise in all his work. Pupa IV. 1. Princess Rajadui Maharahasa, famously beautiful, reigning in Daha, beautiful beyond compare, leaning on her name, is the king's aunt, Maharani's sister in Jiwana, Rani Daha and Rani Jiwana like twin angels. 2. The male Rani Sri Vijayarahasa from the land of Wenkar, handsome as the incarnation of Apendra, well known as a scholar, equal to the king of Singasari, has the same steadfastness in religion. His name is very famous throughout Java. Pupa v. 1. Adinda, the king of Wilwatikta, the beautiful daughter of Lasam, the beautiful daughter of Daha, the famous beauty, Indudui daughter of Vijayarahasa. 2. And again the youngest daughter Kirtawardhana, reigning in Pajong, beautiful beyond compare, the famous daughter of Sri Narapati Jiwana, known as the king's sister. Pupa v. 1. Having been crowned king according to plan, the agile man Rani Lasam is like the king of the Matahan region, with the title Rajasawardhana, very good again, breaking up in Naya. Raja and Rani are praised like Asmara with Pingala. 2. Sri Singawardhana, handsome, good, young, polite and officer, with the title of King of Paguhan. He was the husband of Rani Pajong. His marriage was noble like Sanat Kamara and Dwi Ida. Devotion to the king, love of others, satisfied the people. 3. Bir Lasam sent down the beautiful daughter Nagarawardhani, who resided as the consort of Prince Wayarabhumi. Rani Pajong sent down Bir Mataram Sri Wikramawardhana, like the incarnation of Hyang Kumara, Sri Narendra's main representative. 4. The youngest daughter Rani Pajong ruled the Pawanuhan area, nicknamed Surawardhani, still young as beautiful as a picture. The kings of the island of Java each have a country, and Wilwatikta where they serve Sri Nada together. Pupa 7. 1. Soaring in the melodious hymn of the king's praise, he killed his enemies, like the sun blowing through the fog, gathered the country in power. The main joy of the heart was like a flower, perished wicked like Kumuda, from all the villages in the territory of the tax state flowed like water. 2. The king erased the Murba's sorrow as Satamanyu rained down on the earth, punished criminals like Gadyana, hoarded treasures like Waruna. The Telik entered through all places like Hyang Batara Bayu, guarding the temple as the goddess of the earth, looking good like the moon. 3. It is as if Sanghyang Kama is incarnate, attracted by the beauty of the temple, all the daughters and wives of Sri Radhi's forehead, but the empress of Vijayarahasa descent is still the most beautiful like Susamna, indeed deserves to be your balance. 4. She is the crown daughter of Kusumawardhani, very beautiful with eyes, arches of the day, residing in the Kabalan. The son-in-law of Sri Wikramawardhana holds the civil rights of the whole country, as gods and goddesses they meet hands, delight the eyes. Pupa 8. 1. It's a miracle. City. Red stone walls, thick and high, around the temple, the west door named Purawaktra, facing a wide field, belted on a ditch, body-legged Brahmastana trees, long-lined, neatly shaped in various forms. That's where the waiting for signs are constantly on guard, watch over paceban. 2. In the north stands a beautiful gate with full ornate iron doors. In the east, a sublime stage. The floor is paved with stones, shiny white. In the north, in the south of the week, the houses are crammed far and wide, very beautiful. In the south of the quarter street, the army hall where every Katra meets. 3. The great hall of Manganshire with the Witana hall in the middle, facing the Wadong Padang that extends to 4 directions, the northern part of the Puyanga and minister's paceban, the eastern part of the priestess of Siwabadi, who is in charge of discussing ceremonies during the Palguna Grahana period for the safety of the whole world. 4. To the east of the Pahoman groups of 3 circling the Shiva shrine, next to the main Wipro residence, high-storied, facing the sacrificial stage, standing in the western courtyard. In the north where Buddha has 3 rows, the top is full of ornate, scattered with flowers when the king came down to sacrifice. 5. Inside, to the south of Manganshire there is a door, that is the paceban, nice houses lining the road to the west, between the promontory flowers, some distance to the southwest, the stage where the officers roam, right in the middle of a fully erected courtyard. Busy birds chirping. 6. Inside, in the south there is another paceban that extends to the second exit of the temple, made of stairs, partitioned, each with its own door, all halls with strong reinforced pillars. The rib boards are beyond reproach. The soldiers taking turns guard the door, while exchanging words. Pupa X. 1. These are the actors. Pengalasan Naran, countless numbers, Nyu Gading Jangala Kidiri, Panglarang, Rajadui without Apama, Waisenka Kapanuan Sinalir, Jayangprang Jayagung officers and Parayak Kayu Apu envoys, Gajahan people and many more. 2. This is the beauty of the open field, it is as wide as unlimited. The ministers, nobles, king's assistants in Java are the front line, high-level Bayankari crammed following in the second row, to the north of the palace door, in the south of the knights and poets. 3. In the west, some of the halls extend into the Merkadesa, crowded with employees and assistants and guard officers. In the southern part some distance away, several rooms, the mandapa and the hall where Sri Narapati's servant lived in Paguhan, served overlooking. 4. Entering the second door, the courtyard of the palace is radiant, flat and wide, with a beautiful mansion filled with ornate chairs. To the east, there is a tall house decorated with the royal emblem, that is the hall where Sri Nada's eyes are received in Wilwatikta. Pupa 10. 1. These are the dignitaries who often appear at the Witana Hall. Deputy Minister, a sign of the Minister of Pasangguhan with his companion, Sang Panka Wilwatikta, Mapati, Damung, Kanuruan, Ranga. Tumenging. 5 great Priyi who were familiar with the palace. 2. All the Pada, Damung of the subordinate and reasoning states, all regional officials who have a fixed and steadfast heart, when they come together in the leadership of the whole country, the 5 main ministers who oversee the affairs of the state. 3. Satriya, priests, poets, Vipras, standing under the protection of Ashoka on the side of the Witana, as well as 2 Dharmadhyaksa and their 7 assistants, titled Arya, are agile in their behavior, deserve to be role models. Pupa 11. 1. That is the face of the hall of the Witana, the place where the throne is decorated all gaseous. Refrain from entering the east palace, some distance from the first door, to the south palace where Singawardhana, the empress, her sons and daughters, to the north palace where Kirtawardhana, the 3 of them were like heaven. 2. All the houses have strong pillars, beautifully carved, made in colors, their legs made of red painting stones, depicting various paintings, the roof tiles are shining all over the place, attracting attention, flowers of cape, kesera, sempaka and others scattered in the courtyard. Pupa 12. 1. All houses were neatly arranged along the edge of the fort, east where the priest of Siwa Hyang Brahmaraja lived, south Budi Sangha with Rangkanadi as a leader, west where Arya, ministers and relatives sometimes were kings. 2. In the east, closed by a field, towering magical palaces, Raja Wenkar and Rani Daha Panaka Indra and Dui Sachi, adjacent to the palaces of Raja Matahan and Rani Lasam, not far to the south of Raja Wilwatikta. 3. To the north of the market, a nice, tall house, there lived the Padadaha, the king's brother in Wenkar Bhattara Narapati, famous as the backbone of the Praja, obedient love to the king, officers, very agile and wise. 4. In the northeast, the house of the governor of Wilwatikta, named Gajamata, minister of Weera, wise, loyal to the state, fluent in speech, persistent agile, calm firm, clever and honest, the Maharaja's right hand as the driving force of the country's wheels. 5. South of Puri, the public prosecutor's office has a nice building, east of Siwa housing, west of Budi, stepped by the houses of the ministers, the Arya and knights. The difference in the variety of houses adds to the beauty of the temple. 6. All houses radiate, their colors are so brilliant, match the moon and the sun, beautiful without adoration. The countries in the archipelago, with Daha as their leader, bowed and looked up, taking cover under Wilwatikta. Pupa 13. 1. In detail for the sake of the subordinate state islands, first Malayu, Jambi, Palembang, Toba and Dharmasraya, also called the Kandies, Kawas, Minangkabau, Siak, Rokan, Kampar and Pain, Kamp, Haru and Mandaling, Tamahang regions Perlik and Padang. 2. LWAs with Samudra and Lamuri, Bataan, Lampung and Baras, those are the Malay countries that have submitted, the countries on the island of Tanjung Kapuas Katangan, Sampit, Lingga City, Varingin City, Sambas, Lawai joined it. Pupa 14. 1. Kadandangan, Landa Samadang and Tiram Unforgettable, Sadu, Barun Ing Kalka, Saludung, Solat and also Pasir, Burrito, Sawaku, Tabalung, also Tanjung Kute, Milano remains the most important on the island of Tanjungpura. 2. At Hujung Mandini Pahang which was mentioned first, along with Langkasuka, Samewang, Kelantan and Terengganu, Johor, Paka, Muar, Dungan, Tumasik, Kalangan Kita, Jurai, Kanjapiniran, all of which have long been gathered. 3. In the east of Java, it is as follows. Bali with the important countries Bajulu and Lo Gaja, Desert and Sukun, Taliwang, the islands of Sapi and Dampo, Sanghyang Api, Bima, Saran, forest control as well. 4. Desert Island which is commonly called Red Lombok, with the prosperous Sasak area ruled entirely, Bantayan in the Bantayan region and the city of Luwak, to Uttamakatraya and other islands are subject to submission. 5. There are also the islands of Makassar, Buton, Bangawi, Kunir, Galian and Salayar, Sumba, Solot, Muar, as well as Wanda and Ambon or the islands of Maluku, Wanan, Saran, Timor and several other islands. Pupa vx. 1. This is the name of a foreign country which has a relationship, Siam with Ayodhyapura, as well as Dharmanagari, Marutma, Rajapura, as well as Singanagari, Kampa, Cambodia and Yawana which are friendly countries. 2. Regarding the island of Madura, it is not considered by foreign countries, because since long time ago Java became one, it is said that the year Saka the sea challenged the earth, that was when Java and Madura were separated, although not very far away. 3. Since the archipelago has obeyed the Lord's order, every certain season it offers tribute tax, driven by the desire to increase happiness, poets and employees are ordered to withdraw tribute. Pupa 16. 1. The poets who have long visited the archipelago are prohibited from neglecting state affairs, pursuing profit. If you carry out orders as to where to uphold the Shiva religion, you should reject heretical teachings. 2. It is said that the priests who adhered to Sangsugata, on their way to carry out the orders of the king of Nada, were prohibited from stepping on the land west of the island of Java, because the inhabitants were not Buddhist. 3. The land in the east of Java, especially the desert, Bali, can be explored without any exception, even according to the news, the Mahamuni Umpu Bharata and the king priest of Kucharan have sworn firmly. 4. The priests who received orders to work were sent to the east to west, where they had time to do the offerings as ordered by Sri Nada. Catch the eye when they are teaching. 5. All countries that obeyed were loyal to the orders, guarded and protected by Sri Nada from the island of Java. But those who disobeyed, violated orders, were destroyed by the leadership of the navy, who were already well known and instrumental. Pupa 17. 1. Sri Nada's power has been established in Java and the archipelago, in Sripolitikta where he lives to move the wheels of the world. His name is widely spread, all residents are satisfied with joy and relief. Waipra, poets and all rulers join in to become famous. 2. How great is his power and merit! The great king of the Jangala Kediri region, the great king and the main king. Free from all sorrows, enjoying a life full of all pleasures, all the cute girls in the entire Jangala Kediri region were chosen, gathered in the palace together who were snatched from neighboring countries. 3. The whole land of Java is like a city under the king's control, thousands of people visited like numbers of soldiers besieging a temple. All islands are like rural areas where foodstuffs are stored. Mountains and jungles of forest Panaka amusement park seem harmless. 4. Every month after the rainy season he used to cruise around. The village of Sima in the south of Jalagiri, to the east of the temple, was constantly busy during meetings and Prasetyan ceremonies, excited to travel to visit the local Wiwe Paikatan with 5 temples. 5. Or he goes to pray devotion to Hyang Akalapati, usually continues to Blatar. Jimmer visits the beautiful mountains, in Daha especially in Palaman, to Kuwu and Linga to Bangan village. When he arrives in Jengala he will stop in Surabaya and continue to Buwan. 6. In Aksatijriya 1275, the king headed for Pajong with many companions. Year Saka Anga Naga Aryama 1276, to Lasam. Across the ocean coast. Saka Year Door Mountain Herd Indu 1279, to the South Sea through the forest, relieved to enjoy the beautiful natural scenery of Ladea, Tedu and Sideman. 7. The year of Saka a dragon swallows the moon 1281, in Bhadrapada the month added. Sri Nada traveled around the country to the city of Lumajang, taking a train accompanied by all the kings of Java as well as the consorts and servants, ministers, signs, priests, poets, all the dignitaries taking part. 8. Also in disguise, Prapanka was delighted to accompany the Maharaja's majesty, undeniably happy the Kawi, son of the poet, also a Kakawin lover, chosen by the king as a religious leader to replace his father. All the priests, Umeric talk about his behavior first. 9. The behavior of the Kawi when he was young faced the king, said side by side, did not mean to take heart, so that he was told to follow him everywhere, but not yet able to enjoy nature, develop it, cultivate and compose Kakawin works, so the color of the village along the clan concocted in succession. 10. At first through Japan with dormitories and Ruk temples. Fell down, east of the Pandawa forest Kane, Dalawang, Bibala near Kansi, Ratnapankaja and Kuti Haji Pankaja extended together. Mandala Pandrik, Pongang and Jingan, Kuwu Hanyar are located on the side of the road. 11. After visiting the Pankasara tomb temple, stay at Kapulungan, then the Kawi spent the night in Waru, in Herring not far from the beach, which, following a legal requirement, belonged to the head of the Saraya hostel, but still in the other hand, longing pensively waiting. Pupa 18. 1. As Sri Nada departed from Kapulungan, servants marched along the road full of carriages, the passengers sat huddled together, carts in front and behind, amidst the soldiers walking on foot, jostling, scrambling for the road with elephants and horses. 2. An infinite number of chariots, but with different signs, run in groups, because each minister has a different symbol. The minister's Rakrian, Pada Mangkubumi, a royal immigrant, the trains are several hundred, in groups with various signs. 3. All the Sri Nada Pajong trains all have the sun's picture, all the Sri Nada Lasam trains have a bright white bull, Sri Nada Daha's vehicle has a shiny Dahakusuma moss image, the Sri Nada Jiwana train has a decorative decoration. 4. The Sri Nada Wilwatikta train is priceless, depicting Maha fruit, with a Guringsing cloth roof, decorated with gold paintings, shining bright red, all the employees, the king's Parameswari and also Sri Sudwai's Rani, in short the women on the red train, walk first. 5. The Sri Nada carriage is decorated with moss and Radna Manikam at the back, the other Gempana is veiled with velvet, overflowing with glitter, the meeting looks of the accompanying soldiers of Jenggala Kediri, Panglarang, Seda, Byankari people who come in droves on elephants and horses. 6. In the morning he arrived at Pankaran Mungkur, Sri Nada wanted to take a break, the Rakawi walked away, headed for Sawangan to visit familiarly, late in the sun left again on time for Sri Majesty then, headed east towards Wadu Kaikan, then stopped at Matanjung. 7. The Duku is quiet with the culture near the side of the road, the trees are sparse, different names, Galangong, Badung, not far from Barungbung, unforgettable for Ermanik, the Duku staunchly obeys Yanatreya, satisfied that the Dharmadhyaksa tasted various meals and drinks. 8. Arriving at Kulur, Batang in Gangan Asem, Sri Baganda Nada's journey, it was getting dark, the sun was setting, it was dark at 7 in the evening, the king gave orders to put up a tent in the middle of the rice fields, it was ready to finish eating, quickly began to share the place. Pupa 19. 1. In the morning we depart again for Baya, take a break for 3 days and 3 nights, from Baya via Katang, Kadung Dawa, Rame, to Lamps Times, and the monastery of the priest in Pogara following the soft fat sand road, to the Baringin Tiga area in Dadap, the train still continues run. 2. There is the Madakarapura Kasagadan hamlet with a beautiful view, the land as a gift from Sri Majesty to Gajamada, neatly organized, where the king occupies a decorated guest house, while visiting the spring, kindly takes a devotional bath. Pupa XX. 1. Arriving at the village of Kasagadan, the Baganda was treated to food and drink, various residents of Gapuk, Sada, Wisasaya, Isanabajra, Gantan, Po, Kapahan, Kalampidan, Lambang, Kuran, Pankar, Wepatang, which were located in the monastery neighborhood, all came to face. 2. Likewise, Tingilis and Pabayaman villages also come together, including Radnapankaja in Karkan, a Perdikan village, that is, 14 Kasagadan villages that have become acolytes, since a long time ago only 8 have produced food. Pupa 21. 1. Dawn is breaking. Leave again for the king via Lo Pandik, Ranu Kuning, Balera, Bear, Dawo and Kapayaman, Telpak, Barami, Sapang and Kasadaran. The train runs fast to Paviangan. 2. Descend the village head, cross the rice fields, run towards Jaladipa, Talapika, Padali, Arnun and Pangulan directly to Payaman, Tepasana towards the city of Rembang, arriving at Kemirahan, which is located on the ocean coast. Pupa 22. 1. In Dampar and Patunjungan Sri Baganda chatted along the edge of the ocean to the east, joined the flat, gently swaying across the carriage. He stopped by the lake full of lotus. Tunjung was blooming. Fun watching the prawn swimming in calm water shows its bottom. 2. Overlooked the beauty of the lake water that waves with the sea of abandoned lakes, towards Weedy and Gunter hidden on the edge of the Kasagadan Bajraka road including the Taladvia area since a long time ago like Patunjungan, due to war, have not returned to the dormitory. 3. Crossed the place, to the east following the forest along the edge of the ocean stop at Palumban hunting for a while, departing after late sun crossing the Rabutlawang River which happens to be low tide down the head of Balater village to the ocean shore, then spend the night again. 4. At dawn, head for Kunir Basini, in Sedang. Spend the night turns to night, the majesty accrues to enjoy the nature of Sarampilan. After his death, he is approaching the city of Bokok, having fun on the beach. Wonder at the reef splashed with ripples radiating like rain. 5. But the Rakawi did not visit Bokok, went on the road from Sedang to the north towards Balung, continued to Tumbu and Habet Galaga, Tampaling, rested at Rene's while waiting for the king to meet again on the way to Jayakreta Wanagriya. Pupa 23. 1. Through Dani Bontong, Puruan, Bachak Pakasaji, Padangan continues to Sikang Terlintas Jadi Gumalar, North Silabango to Diwa Rame and Shaman. 2. Then go again to Pakembangan. There you spend the night. Immediately departed he came to the end of the village head Daya Yang immediately descended into a ravine. 3. From the coast to the north along the road. Very narrow, very difficult to walk. The moss is slippery due to rain. Many trains are damaged due to violations. Pupa 24. 1. The train runs too smoothly through Palayongan and Bangkong, 2 villages without stories, continues to Sarana. Those who feel tired want to take a break, others rush over the road to Surabasa. 2. Obstructed by the sunset stopping in the meadow, dusk goes down, tired cows are released from the pair. Turning north through Tarayan, crowds hurrying to reach Patakongan. Pupa 25. 1. The length of seagrass is told of the behavior of the ministers and servants. Your Majesty arrived at the village of Patakongan. Utara Pakuwuan, the guest house of Bagandanata. 2. All ministers from foreign countries were present at Pakuwuan. Also Prosecutor Pa Real Sang Wangsadaraja attended the meeting with the flawless Upapati. Religious leaders of the Panji Siwa religion, understood law and were literate. Pupa 26. 1. The Duke of Saradikara led the ceremony and welcome. Followed by all the inhabitants of the Patakongan region delivering offerings, being happy with being awarded the cloth garang. The people were happy with the king, the nails were overflowing with joy. 2. For the view there is a house from the end extending to the sea. Various forms, the yard raft, from afar like an island. The road is shaky bridges that seem to sway by the waves. That is what Sang Aryan made in preparation for welcoming the king. Pupa 27. 1. To reduce the sumac due to the hot sun, Your Majesty approached the empress like the gods. The daughters were like apsari descending from heaven. 2. The disappearance of anomalies changes a look of amazement. Various games are held for the sake of enjoyment. 3. Do everything that makes the people happy. Dance masks, wrestle, amaze people. Indeed, he is an incarnate god, circling the world. Pupa 28. 1. During a visit to the village of Patakongan, ministers from Bali and Madura from Balumbung, the trust of the ministers throughout East Java gathered. 2. Abundant offerings of Bekti fur. Pig, goodle, buffalo, cow, chicken and dog. 3. The received cloth is piled up. The audience is dumbfounded, staring. 4. The king came out early in the morning in the midst of the people. Accompanied by the Kawi and poets sowing wealth, making the people happy. Pupa 29. 1. Only the poet in disguise Prapanka sad without a Pama mourning for the loss of Kawi friends Buddha Panji Kurtayasa friends rejoice, close friends in the Gama ceremony. 2. He was called home, was starting to compose a magnificent work. I thought he was still healthy, able to take me anywhere. 3. He knows which places are worth seeing. Apparently the poet wanted to pass down a magnificent, beautiful work. 4. But he died. When I arrived, it was unexpected. That's why I also went to the village of Kita Melawati Tal Tungal, Halalong Panjang, Pakaran and Bungadan until Toya Rungan, Wallanding, continued to breathe. then spent the night leaving for Lembang, immediately arrived in Kedah. The National Library of Indonesia, on February 21, 2008, received an award from UNESCO regarding the Negara Kretagama collection, or a description of a country in 1365 AD, which is listed in the memory of the World Regional Register for Asia Pacific. The Nagarakretagama manuscript. The complete translation of the manuscript Nagarakretagama manuscript Pujasastra Nagarakretagama consists of 98 stanzas. The contents of the distribution are done very neatly. Nagarakretagama consists of two parts. The first part starts with Pupa 1 to 49, while the second part starts from Pupa 50 to 98. The original title of this manuscript is Desawarnana, which means History of Villages. Since it was rediscovered by archaeologists, this manuscript has been called Nagarakretagama, which means the story of state development. Lubdaka by Mpu Tanakung. Lubdaka, the literary work written by Mpu Tanakung, is estimated to be in the middle of the 15th century under the protection of the King Sri Suraprabawa. It is written in this book: there is a hunter named Lubdaka. On the 14th half of the evening he went hunting. But he did not find a single game until night fell. Frightened, he climbed onto the wilwa tree, picking its leaves to keep him up all night. Under the tree there is a lake where there is a swa phallus and the leaves fall right above it. The next day he came home empty-handed. A few years later the hunter fell ill and eventually died. His soul floated. Then Shiva sent his servant to pick up the hunter, but there was a war between Shiva's servants and the Kinkaras fighting over the hunter's soul, which was won by the Shiva servants. The soul of the hunter was brought to Shiva's place and there he was greeted very nicely. Due to defeat, Kinkara's parent reported to Yama. Yama felt that he had failed to carry out his duties and Yama decided to resign from his duties to Shiva. Finally Shiva explained that on the night of Shiva to be respected, Lubdaka was the only one and also the first person to do the cleansing of sins by worshipping Shiva on a night called Siwaratri, even though the worship was accidental and unknown to Lubdaka himself. Thus he should receive the gift, and all his sins were washed away. Parthayajna and Kunjarakarna. Parthayajna and Kunjarakarna are two Kekawin works by Mpu Tanakung whose story is similar to the reliefs of an earlier site in East Java. Parthayajna. In this literary work, it tells of Arjuna's journey to Mount Indrakila. In order to prepare for a fierce battle, Arjuna must run a topo brodo in order to get the help, weapons they need. Mount Indrakila is a place where he can meet the gods. On the way he later met Kama and Radha, the god and Cupid. Arjuna continued his journey to Mount Indrakila, continually taking care. He grappled with temptation until he felt tired and finally he arrived at the week at Dwaipyana's residence. After receiving the news of what had happened in Hastina and what was the purpose of Arjuna's journey, he explained the nature of the Kauravas and Pandavas, which are actually evil reincarnations, while the Pandavas god Pansakusaka was sent by the Mahadeva to kill the Kauravas when the appointed time arrives. With this intention in his heart, Arjuna headed for Mount Indrakarana. After 1 year his goal was achieved and Shiva appeared as Karada. Visit the colors. Yaksa Kunjarakarna performed a tapabroto on Mount Semeru in order to be freed from his demonic character in the following incarnation. After coming to Varokana, he was given gifts about Dharma and was given information about the various fates experienced by beings in this world. The god praised her for such concern. With an anxious heart about his friend's fate, Kunjarakarna then went to his local family to tell him what he had seen and heard. King Gandharva seemed jolted to hear the news of his unexpected death. Then they both went to face the hermit, Sata Nirmala. After that he decided to accompany Kunjarakarna to do a tapabroto. Subhadraviwaha, marriage of Subhadra, or Parthayana, wandering of Arjuna, Kakawin, is a poetic theme in line with the Adiparva story. Consisting of 55 pupas, the writer is quite good at poetry techniques in descriptions of nature and scenes of romance faithfully. The difference occurs in the name of the kingdom of Raja Sitradahana. In Mahabharata it is called Manipura, in Parva literature it is called Manayura, in Kakawin it is called Mayura. In Mahabharata Apsari it is called Narga, in Parva it is Sarwada, in Kakawin it is called Puspamasi. The author seems to have followed the Parva version. Abhimanyu. The marriage of Abhimanyu, Kakawin Abhimanyu is almost similar to Subhadraviwaha. There is a reciprocal relationship between the Parva version and this Kakawin which immediately follows from the prose work. The descriptive section is added, the narrative section is shortened without changing it. Hariwiyaya, Vishnu's victory. Namely the story of the success of Lord Vishnu in cutting or beheading the giant Rahu's head with his chakra who was drinking Amrita. The scene is a Hariwijaya theme, and the language, style and poetic technique of this kakawin is similar to that of Subhadrawiwaha and Abhimayuwiwaha. In the following kakawin Krishna is the main character such as Kresnawijaya, the nephew of Krishna or Kalayawanantaka, death of Kalayawana, Kalantaka or Kresnakalantaka, death of the giant Kresnakala, Kresnantaka, death of Krishna or Kresnandaka. A small minority of kakawin takes sources from Adiparva, such as Subhadrawiwaha, Hariwijaya, Kalayawanantaka, Aschasraya, Astika assistants Dimbiwisitra, Radawijaya and Kandawawanadahana, Indrajaya, Ambasraya, Amba looking for help, which comes from the last part of Udyogaparva's victory, Fardawijaya Bhismaparva, or Israya, it is probably similar to Uttarakanda. Narakawiyaya. This kakawin may not make sense or be nearly impossible among the public because it ended in victory on the part of the giants. In writing the kakawin, the title Victory of Naraka is precisely given to the last stanza. This proves that this kakawin is left unfinished or that part of the cover is missing when passed down from generation to generation. This kakawin can rightly be described as a complement to Bomantaka. Bhismaparva is said to be the most important part of the Mahabharata because this sixth book contains the Bhagavad-Gita. In the Bhismaparva it is told how the two troops, the Kaurava army and the Pandava troops faced each other before Bharatayuddha began. Then the Arjuna and Kresna's coachmen were between the two armies. Arjuna could see the Kaurava army and the Kauravas, his own cousin. He also became sad because he had to fight them. Even though they were evil, Arjuna remembered how they had been educated together as children and now faced each other as enemies. Then Kresna gave Arjuna a discourse. This discourse is called the Bhagavad-Gita or Gita Sang Bhagawan, which means the song of a saint. Bhismaparva ended with the defeat of Bhisma, the grandfather of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Bhishma has a supernatural power that he can die at his own time. Then he chose to remain asleep lying on his arrowed Saratalpa until the Bharatayuddha war was over. Bhisma was hit by so many arrows that he fell, but his body did not touch the ground, only the tips of his arrows. Summary of the contents of the Bhismaparva book. Janamejaya asked, how did the heroes of the Kuru, Pandavas and Somaka nations, along with their kings who came from various kingdoms, arrange their troops to be ready for battle? Hearing this question, Vesampayana described in detail the events that were taking place on the Kurukshetra battlefield. The atmosphere on the battlefield, Kurukshetra before the battle began, both sides had already filled the mainland of Kurukshetra. Prominent kings in ancient India such as Drupada, Sudakshina Cambodia, Balika, Salya, Warada, Udamanyu, Udamalha, Uyudana, Chekatana, Purujit, Kuntaboja, and others participated in the massacre. Bhishma, the elder of the Kuru clan, wearing a white robe and white flag, shines, and looks like a white mountain. Arjuna got on a chariot pulled by 4 white horses driven by Kresna, who was wearing a yellow silk robe. The Kaurava troops faced west, while the Pandava troops faced east. The Kaurava troops consist of 11 divisions, while the Pandava troops consist of 7 divisions. The Pandavas arranged their troops to form the Bajra formation, a formation that was said to have been created by Lord Indra. The Kaurava troops were outnumbered by the Pandava troops, and their formation was more terrifying. The formation was compiled by Drona, Bhisma, Aswadama, Balika, and Kripa, who were all experts in warfare. The elephant armies are the body of formation, the kings are the heads and the cavalry are the wings. Yudhishthira was shaking and anxious at the formation that seemed difficult to penetrate, but after receiving an explanation from Arjuna, his confidence rose. Before the battle began, Bhishma first blew his scallop trumpet which shocked the entire battlefield, then followed by the kings and knights, both from the Kaurava and the Pandavas. After that, Arjuna ordered Kresna, who was the charioteer, to take him to the middle of the battlefield, so that Arjuna could see who was ready to fight and who he had to face later on the battlefield. In the middle of the battlefield, Arjuna saw his grandfather, teacher, friends, brother-in-law and relatives standing on the battlefield, ready to fight. Suddenly Arjuna became weak after seeing the situation. He didn't have the heart to kill them all. He wanted to resign from the battlefield. Arjuna said, "Kind-hearted Krishna, after seeing friends and relatives in front of me, with such enthusiasm for fighting, I felt my limbs tremble and my mouth felt dry. We would be overcome by sin if we killed such an attacker. Therefore, it is not appropriate for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. O Kresna, husband of Lakshmi Devi, what is in it for us, and how can we be happy by killing our own relatives?" Quote. Plagued by mental turmoil, between what was right and what was wrong, Kresna tried to bring Arjuna back to his senses. Kresna, who became Arjuna's charioteer, gave sacred discourses to Arjuna, so that he could distinguish which one is right and what is wrong. Krishna also explained various Hindu teachings to Arjuna, so that all doubts in his heart would disappear, so that he wanted to continue fighting. In addition, Kresna showed Arjuna his universal form, so that Arjuna would know who Kresna really was. The sacred discourse that Kresna gave to Arjuna was later called Bhagavad-Gita, which means, Song of God. These teachings were then summarized into separate books and were very popular among Hindus, because they were considered to be the main points of Hinduism and the essence of Vedic teachings. Yudhishthira's pre-war respect after Arjuna realized his obligation and wanted to continue the fight because he had received a sacred message from Kresna. The battle began immediately. Arjuna raised his bow named Gandiva, accompanied by loud cheers. The troops of both sides thundered. They blow trumpets and horns, beat drums and drums. The gods, Patara, Rishi, and other inhabitants of heaven also witnessed the massacre. In the moments leading up to the battle, Yudhishthira suddenly took off his armor, put down his weapon, and got off the chariot, covering his hands and walking toward the Kaurava troops. All parties who saw his actions did not believe it. The Pandavas followed him from behind, wondering, but Yudhishthira was silent, only continuing to walk. While all parties were amazed, only Kresna smiled because he knew Yudhishthira's goal. The Kaurava troops were curious about Yudhishthira's actions. They were ready to be fully armed and did not take their eyes off Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira walked towards Bhishma, then with a sincere sense of devotion he dropped himself and worshipped Bhishma's feet, the grandfather whom he greatly respected. Yudhishthira said, "I have come to pay homage to you, O brave and invincible king. We will face your lord in battle. We ask your permission in this matter, and we ask for your blessing." Bhishma replied, "If you, O Maharaja, face this coming battle, you do not come to me like this, I will surely curse you, O descendant of Bharata, to suffer defeat. I am satisfied, O noble son. Fight and win, O son of Pandu. What other goals do you hope to achieve in this battle? Ask for a blessing and blessing, O son of Pritha. Ask for what you want. With my blessing it is certain, O Maharaja, that defeat will not befall you. People can be slaves to wealth, but wealth is not a slave to anyone. This state of affairs is true, O son of the Kuru people. With his wealth, the Kauravas have bound me." Quote. After Yudhishthira received the blessing of Bhishma, then he worshipped Drona, Kripa, and Salya. All of them gave the same blessing as said by Bhisma, and prayed that victory would go to the Pandavas. After receiving the blessing of all of them, Yudhishthira returned to his troops, and was ready to start the fight. Yuyutsu sided with the Pandavas after arriving at the center of the battlefield. Between the two armies facing each other, Yudhishthira exclaimed, "Whoever chooses us, they are the ones I have chosen to be our allies." After exclaiming thus, there was a brief silence. Suddenly, among the Kaurava troops, Yuyutsu shouted an answer. With a straight look at the Pandavas, Yuyutsu exclaimed, "I am willing to fight under your royal banner, for your victory. I will face the son of Dhritarashtra, even if the king is willing to accept. Such is it, O holy king." With joy, Yudhishthira exclaimed, "Come, come here. We all want to fight against your foolish brothers. O Yuyutsu, both Vasudeva, Kresna, and we 5 brothers declare to you that I accept you, O mighty hero, strive with us, for my sake, to uphold Dharma. It seems that only you are the successor of the Dhritarashtra line, and at the same time continuing to carry out the offering ceremonies to their ancestors. O brave crown prince, accept us who have also accepted you." Duryodhana, who is cruel and understandable, is at the same time meeting his end. After hearing such an answer, Yuyutsu left the Kaurava army and joined the Pandavas. His arrival was greeted happily. Yudhishthira put on his armor again, then fought. The Battle of Bhishma massacre began. Both sides advanced fully armed. The Kaurava troop divisions and the Pandava troop divisions slaughtered each other. Bhishma advanced to attack the Pandava knights and destroy anything that got in his way. Abhimanyu saw this and told his uncles to be careful. He himself tried to attack Bhishma and his guards. However, the efforts of the Pandava knights on the first day were unsuccessful. They accepted defeat. The sons of Raja Warada, Uttara and Swedia, died by Bhisma and Salya on the first day. The defeat on the first day made Yudhishthira become pessimistic. But Lord Krishna said that the real victory would be on the side of the Pandavas. On the second day, Arjuna was determined to turn the things he had gotten on the first day. Arjuna tried to attack Bhishma and kill him, but the Kaurava troops marched around Bhishma and protected him with all their might, making it difficult for Arjuna. The Kaurava troops attacked Arjuna, who was about to kill Bhisma. The two sides slaughtered each other, and most of the Kaurava troops died at the hands of Arjuna. After wiping out the entire Kaurava army, Arjuna and Bhisma were involved in a fierce duel. Meanwhile, Drona attacked Drestadyumna repeatedly and broke her arrows many times. Duryodhana sent reinforcements from the Kalinga kingdom to attack Bhima, but the attack from Duryodhana was unsuccessful and his troops were all killed. Satyaki, who was allied with the Pandavas, shot Bhisma's chariot driver to death. Without a coachman, the horse ran Bhisma's carriage away from the battlefield. At the end of the second day, the Kauravas were defeated. Kresna's patience ran out, so he wanted to finish off Bhishma with his own hands, but Arjuna stopped him. On the third day, Bhisma gave instructions for the Kaurava troops to form an eagle formation with himself as the commander at the front line while the Duryodhana soldiers protected the rearguard. Bhisma wants that there will be no more failures. Meanwhile, the Pandavas anticipated this by forming a crescent moon formation with Bhima and Arjuna as the leaders of the right and left wings. The Kaurava troops focused their attacks on Arjuna, but many Kaurava troops were unable to match Arjuna's strength. Abhimanyu and Satyaki joined forces to destroy Sankuni's Gandhara army. Bhisma, who was involved in a fierce duel with Arjuna, was still fighting half-heartedly. Duryodhana scolded Bhishma for being reluctant to finish off Arjuna. Duryodhana's words offended Bhishma's heart, then she changed her feelings. Arjuna and Kresna tried to attack Bhishma. Arjuna and Bhisma were once again involved in a violent battle, although Arjuna still felt reluctant to fight his grandfather. Krishna became very angry with the situation and said, "I cannot be patient anymore, I will kill Bhisma with my own hands." Then he took his chakra and ran towards Bhishma. Bhishma surrendered himself to Kresna with resignation. He felt lucky if he died in the hands of Kresna. Arjuna ran after him and prevented Krishna from doing so. Arjuna held Krishna's leg. At the 10th step, Kresna stopped. Arjuna said, "Oh my honor, quell this anger. Your Majesty, where we take refuge." "All right, today I swear, on behalf of my brothers and sisters, that I will not withdraw from my oath that I have spoken." Kesawa, O little brother of Dewa Indra, by order of your Majesty, all right, I will destroy the Kuru nation. Hearing this vow, Kresna was satisfied. His anger subsided, but he still held onto the chakra weapon. Then they both continued fighting and destroying many Kaurava troops. The fourth day is the day Bhima shows his courage. Bhisma ordered the Kaurava troops to move. Abhimanyu was surrounded by the knights of the Kauravas and then attacked. Arjuna saw this and then helped Abhimanyu. Bhima appeared at this crucial moment and then attacked the Kaurava knights with clubs. Then Duryodhana sent an army of elephants to attack Bhima. When Bhima saw an army of elephants heading towards him, he got off the train and attacked them one by one with his steel club. They were thrown and slammed towards the Kaurava troops. Then Bhima attacked the Kaurava knights and killed 8 of Duryodhana's younger brothers. Finally he got an arrow and fell on his chariot. Ghatotkacha saw this, then felt very angry with the Kaurava troops. Bhisma advised that no one could fight against the angry Ghatotkacha, then ordered the troops to withdraw. On that day, Duryodhana lost many of his brothers. The massacres continued. On the fifth day, the massacres continued. The Pandavas with all their might responded to Bhisma's attack. Bhima is on the front line with Srikandi and Drestadyumna at his side. Because Srikandi played a woman, Bhisma refused to fight and left. Meanwhile, Satyaki destroyed a large army sent to attack him. The battle continued with a fight between Satyaki and Arisrawas, and then Satyaki was in trouble so that he was in a precarious situation. Seeing this, Bhima came to protect Satyaki and save his life. Elsewhere, Arjuna fought and killed thousands of soldiers sent by Duryodhana to attack him. The bloodshed that was hard to imagine continued from day to day as the battle lasted. The sixth day was a day of great carnage. Drona slaughtered many soldiers on the Pandavas' side whose numbers were difficult to measure. The formation of the two sides broke. On the eighth day, Bhima killed 8 sons of Dhritarashtra. Arjuna's son, Iravan, was killed by the Kauravas. On the ninth day Bhishma attacked the Pandava troops blindly. Many Laskar were scattered because of Bhishma's attack. Many fled or stayed away from Bhishma, the powerful old warrior from the Kuru Wangsa. Krishna spurred his horses to run towards Bhishma. Arjuna and Bhisma were involved in a fierce battle, but Arjuna fought half-heartedly while Bhishma attacked him insistently. Seeing this situation, Krishna became angry once again. He wanted to end the history of Bhishma with his own hands. He jumped off Arjuna's carriage, with red eyes burning as a sign of anger, moved to walk towards Bhishma. With his chakra weapon in hand, Krishna aimed at Bhishma. Bhishma resignedly did not avoid it, but felt even happier if he died in the hands of Krishna. Seeing this, Arjuna followed Krishna and tried to pull Krishna's leg to stop him. With a sad and halting voice, Arjuna said, "O Kesawa Krishna, don't you fake the words that you have said before. Your Majesty has promised that he will not join the war. O Madhava Krishna, if you continue your intentions, people will say that you are a liar. All the suffering caused by this war, servants have to endure it. Servant will kill that honorable grandfather." Krishna didn't answer after hearing Arjuna's words, but holding back his anger he got back in his chariot. The two troops resumed their battle. Rishi Bhisma sleeping on the arrow bed, Saratalpa, the Pandavas did not know how to defeat Bhishma. At night, the Pandavas infiltrated Bhishma's camp. Bhisma greeted him with a prayer of blessing. The Pandavas explained the purpose of his arrival, which is to find a way to defeat Bhishma. Then Bhisma revealed things that made him not have the heart to go to war. After hearing Bhishma's explanation, Arjuna discussed with Krishna. He did not have the heart to end his grandfather's history. Then Krishna tried to make Arjuna aware of what was right and what was wrong. On the 10th day, the Pandava troops were spearheaded by Srikandi on the front lines. The heroine attacks Bhishma, but he is ignored. Bhisma only laughed at Srikandi, because he didn't want to attack the heroine who had a female personality. Seeing Bhisma avoiding Srikandi, Arjuna shot Bhisma repeatedly. Dozens of arrows stuck in Bhishma's body. Bhisma fell from the train. The Pandava troops cheered. Right on that day it was evening. The two sides stopped their fight. They surrounded Bhishma who lay not touching the ground supported by arrows. Bhishma told the knights to give him a pillow, but not a single pillow he accepted. Then he told Arjuna to give him a pillow. Arjuna stuck 3 arrows under Bhishma's head as a pillow. Bhishma approved of Arjuna's actions, and he said that he chose the day of death when the solstice was in the north. Mahabharata book is an earlier Indonesian. Part 2 to Part 3. Santosaba works. Created as a discourse to scientists based on academic studies and studies, in an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. Indonesian Arya. By Santosaba. Exploration and research. Complete info. WhatsApp to +62 813 2132 9787.